where power was draped in silk and perfumed in rosewater, where every tomb was a poem and every garden a prayer. Welcome to the world of the Mughals. This is a series about luxury through history, and this episode is about one of the richest civilizations in the history of mankind, which also happened to be one of the most cultured and civilized. This is a tale of the Mughal Empire, an empire so luxurious it could afford to die elegantly, leaving behind only poetry in stone and talis in the stars. To the Mughals, power meant more than conquest. It meant taste, and taste meant immortality. The Mughal Empire ruled India between the year 1526 and 1857. They came from the steppes of Central Asia, where Genghis Khan once held court, but their wealth did not come from mines or trade routes. It came from the richest lands in the world. The fertile Indo-Gangetic plain was already a cradle of civilization, and soon became a sea of plenty for the Mughal emperors. But they did not squander their wealth. They transformed it, turning every grain of rice into a work of art, every stone into a prayer, every garden into a poem. There are two ways to measure the opulence of any civilization. One is through what they ate, drank, wore, and slept on. The other is through how grandly they decorated the world around them. So let's start with the food. Because the Mughal table was legendary, for 7 days a week, there would be dishes made with saffron rice, spiced with cardamom and cloves, baked in gold Versace plates, sometimes even served with golden cutlery. Imagine eating from pure gold, dipped in honey and pistachio sauce. They loved their sweets too, especially those made with rosewater, milk, nuts, and sugar. They were served on silver platters embossed with flowers and lotuses. And after the meal, instead of coffee, they sipped on fragrant teas and perfumed drinks made with rose petals and almonds. For the common folk, a mango, a coconut, or a glass of sweet lassi would do. But for the emperor, everything had to be presented in a manner that affirmed his elevated status, making everyday meals an affirmation of the divine order. In fact, all of these feasts were part of a larger ceremony called the royal dastan, where servants would narrate stories while serving the food, turning every dish into a new chapter in the book of the emperor's life. But while food painted a picture of the emperor's life, it was his clothes that revealed his soul. The Mughal emperors of the 17th century were obsessed with one thing: peacock feathers. Their obsession was so famous that the artist Raja Ravi Verma would immortalize it in a painting centuries later. But why were these feathers such a big deal? Because they symbolized more than just royalty. They were associated with beauty, immortality, and divinity. Peacocks were said to live for 100 years, hence the feathers symbolized longevity. They were also supposed to ward off evil spirits and bad omens. The mules took their fashion inspiration from Persia. They wore long, flowing robes in luxurious fabrics like velvet, brocade, and silk. Sometimes they wore turbans with matching shawls draped over their shoulders like poetry in motion. The finest of these silks came from the Kashmir Valley. It was said that the Mughal emperors went to great lengths to protect the weavers here, building special watchtowers to guard their looms. Why? Because these looms wove magic, turning simple threads into tapestries that rivaled the stars. Once Jahangir ascended the throne, he declared a personal vendetta against ordinary cotton cloth, banning its use across his vast kingdom. He wanted everyone to wear silk. As for women, they followed Persian styles, wearing elaborate ghagras, cholis, and odhnas, often with golden borders that shimmered like the sun. They accessorized with jewels and henna tattoos, turning every gathering into a festival of colors and textures. While the Mughal men and women adorned themselves with finery, they also surrounded themselves with art. And when we say art, we mean poetry in stone, paintings that told stories and pictures that smelled like roses. The Mughals brought Persian miniature painting to India, which depicted scenes from mythology, history, and poetry. These paintings were not mere illustrations, they were works of art in their own right. Emperor Akbar employed several hundred painters who created thousands of illustrated some of which were bound by hand in covers made of pure emerald. The pages of these books had scenes from ancient Indian epics like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, but they also showed European ambassadors arriving at the Mughal court. They created a style that blended Persian finesse with Indian motifs and colors. When Shah Jahan came to power, he continued this patronage of the arts. He built beautiful buildings like the Taj Mahal and the Red Fort, each one a testament to his love for symmetry, geometry, and white marble. These structures were not just palaces and tombs, they were poems in stone. The Taj Mahal, for instance, is a mausoleum, but it's also a symbol of eternal love, built by a grieving husband for his beloved wife. But then again, symmetry and balance were very important to them. That's why almost every structure they built had 4 minarets at the corners or 4 gates facing 4 directions, symbolizing the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Even the gardens followed this pattern. The Shalimar Gardens in Lahore were designed with fountains and pools divided into geometric sections, creating a perfect harmony between the natural world and human order. It wasn't just buildings and gardens. They loved decorating everything they came across, even weapons and jewelry. They turned swords into poetry by engraving them with verses from their favorite poets. They designed jewelry that told stories, each gem narrating a tale of love, loss, courage, or devotion. But their greatest legacy is perhaps the exquisite carpets they commissioned. The finest of these were made in Kashmir, with designs so intricate they took months to complete. These carpets were not just floor coverings, they were tapestries, telling stories without words and wrapping legends in wool. Now, let's talk about the sounds of the Mughal era, because their music was as refined as their poetry, as delicate as their paintings, and as entrancing as their gardens. They patronized many forms of classical Indian music, from Drupad to ghazals to music was everywhere, from royal courts to bustling bazaars, from temple rituals to Sufi musicians were highly respected, often invited to the imperial court to perform for the emperor's pleasure. The Mughal emperors were patrons of the arts and sciences, and they understood the power of music to elevate the human spirit. But it was the gardens that truly set the Mughal era apart. These weren't just patches of green in a concrete world. They were sanctuaries, each plant and tree carefully placed to create a dialogue between nature and design. The Mughal emperors were fascinated by Persian gardens, and they recreated the best of them in their own realm. These gardens followed the Shahbag design, a Persian term meaning 4-part paradise. The idea was to create a miniature cosmos, a world unto itself. The garden was divided into 4 quadrants, representing the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Water flowed through the garden in fountains and canals, reflecting the sky and adding a soothing soundtrack to the symphony of birdsong. Flowers bloomed in geometric patterns, adding splashes of color to the canvas of green. The Mughal emperors saw these gardens as a reflection of their own souls, a microcosm of the universe, a place where the divine order was visible through the harmonious arrangement of trees, plants, and water. The gardens weren't just beautiful, they were philosophical. They were a reminder of the balance and harmony that existed in the universe and in the soul of man. But beyond all of these luxuries, there was one thing that defined the Mughals more than anything else, and that was their love for ceremony. Their courts were not just places of governance, they were stages where the drama of power was played out in all its glory. When a new emperor took the throne, it was a spectacle. The coronation ceremonies were elaborate affairs, filled with rituals and symbols that affirmed the divine right of kings. The emperor was seen as a representative of God on earth, and the ceremonies reflected this belief. There was a lot of symbolism involved, from the colors to the costumes to the rituals themselves. For example, the use of gold and white indicated purity and enlightenment. The emperor's throne was often placed in a way that symbolized his connection to the heavens, and the coronation ceremony itself was seen as a way to connect the earthly realm with the divine. And finally, the Mughal emperors knew the value of publicity. They understood that the splendor of their courts was not just for the people, it was also for the world. They wanted everyone to see and hear about their magnificence, because it was a way to project power, to intimidate enemies, and to all allies. The grandeur of the Mughal court was a way to create a lasting impression, a reminder of the emperor's greatness that would be talked about for generations to come. However, as the years went by, the shine of the Mughal Empire began to fade. Internal strife and colonial pressure weakened the once mighty empire. The British East India Company began to assert its dominance and eventually took control of large parts of India. By the end of the 18th century, the Mughal emperor was little more than a puppet in the hands of the British. Still, in 1947, when India gained independence, the British looted the Peacock Throne, the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and many other priceless treasures, taking them back to Britain. Yet despite all the trials and tribulations, the Mughal Empire left behind a legacy that continues to inspire and amaze us today. The Taj Mahal still stands as a monument to love and beauty. The Red Fort reminds us of a glorious past, and the paintings and gardens continue to captivate our imagination. The Mughal Empire was more than just a collection of rich and powerful rulers. It was a testament to the human spirit's desire for beauty, order, and harmony. It was a dream that shimmered, a vision that inspired, and a legacy that continues to live on in the hearts and minds of people around the world. Thank you for watching this episode. We'll see you next time.